All right, so let's go ahead and get started now. So I'd like to welcome everyone to this webinar. I will actually hand it over to Dave Howard right now, who's going to give a short intro on the on his presentation and has full rights. So Dave, take it away.
All right, thanks very much, David. Welcome, everybody. My name is Dave Howard. My company is Twin Peaks Training, and we're a training services provider here in Poway. But today I want to talk to you about cybersecurity for your small business. And cybersecurity is a big deal. Everybody knows that. But unfortunately, a lot of small businesses don't realize that they do have things that hackers want, and that they can be and are actually a legitimate target for hacking. And so today I'm going to walk you through some of the basics of cybersecurity. Just briefly, who is this guy? Well, I have been in learning and development for over 20 years. I started out as a technical trainer. I've done instructional design, been in a classroom and virtual classroom instructor. I do e-learning design and development, all the things you see. I'm kind of like a Swiss Army knife of learning and development. And you can see on screen some of my former clients and employers include FedEx, ESET, the cybersecurity firm, Toyota Finance, taught for the Learning Annex, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So I've done training for big companies and small. And I just really like to get people to have that aha moment. And I think cybersecurity is just kind of a minimum expectation now. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we weren't using email for business. We were just forwarding jokes and memes to each other. And now email is an essential piece of business. Cybersecurity is kind of like washing your hands. It's not something that you can leave to somebody else. And my interest in cybersecurity actually started back in 1997. There was a virus that was created for Microsoft Word, and it was called the Wazoo macro virus. And basically what it did is it injected itself into a Microsoft Word document, and it would insert the word Wazoo, W-A-Z-Z-U, into your documents in random places. And then it would take groups of 3 words and move them to random places. So you would work all night on a paper, or you would put together a contract, and then you would go to print it out, and it would have Wazoo in it, and words would be moved around, and it was really annoying. And it spread throughout the world in a matter of months. And this is back in 1997. So I happened to be working with Kinko's at the time, and people would come in to print things out, and they would say, "Why does my thing say Wazoo?" And so I had to learn what that was all about and how to fix it. And so that was the beginning. And I've been cleaning my friends' computers and teaching people about cybersecurity ever since. And I will tell you that my kids have never had a computer get nuked because of a virus. So you can trust me on this. All right, so here's our agenda. We have a lot of stuff to cover in a short period of time. So I implore you to take notes and ask questions. If you're watching this on the web, please feel free to get in touch with me afterwards. I'll have my contact information at the end of the webinar, and please use me as a resource. I may not be able to fix everything, but I do know a lot about how you can get things fixed, or at least plan for preparing and educating yourself about some of these threats. So here's what we're going to cover. And we're going to cover in a very short period of time, but I want to leave ample time for questions. So please jump in anytime you have a question. We're going to talk about the threatscape, what hackers want and what hackers do, and what's currently the major threat that your business faces in 2021. We're going to talk about 2 distinct types of businesses. And really, when I get to that slide, you'll understand there are only 2. We're going to talk about what I call the Holy Trinity of security, which is awareness, education, and preparation. They all work together, and you need all 3. It's no good just to be aware of ransomware and phishing attacks and pretexting. You have to educate yourself and your staff about it, and you have to prepare your business and every workstation, every endpoint I'm gonna give you the minimum basic must-have defensive tools list. And you can look at it real quick right now, but if you're missing any of these things, or you feel like you don't have adequate protection here, I'll talk about how easy and inexpensive it is to have all of these things defending you and your data. We're going to talk about policies and procedures. Businesses need to have policies so that they have a standard way of setting expectations about how technology will be used, what's going to happen to the data, where it's going to be kept. It's no good having strong passwords if you have an insecure website, or if your e-commerce solution is not secure. So you have to have the policies in place, and you have to enforce them. And you need to have an incident response plan, because it's not a matter of if you will get a breach, it's a matter of when your data will get breached. We're going to talk about industrial control systems and operations technology, because that is an area that's facing increasing attacks every day, and they don't use the same operating systems and controls that Windows and Mac and Linux computers do. It's not information technology, it's operations technology. And I'll tell you about a couple of the hacks that have happened and what the potential is for ICS attacks. And then finally, I'm going to give you a bunch of resources where you can get additional training, resources on the web. I've put up on my website 3 PDF resource guides that you're going to get for free after this webinar. And if you're watching on the web, the link will be there for you, and you can go and grab that stuff, and it'll be there forever. So you can pass it on to your friends as well. I want everybody to have access to this information. All right, so let's talk about hackers. And if you're on the webinar right now, why don't you go ahead and unmute and tell me, what do you think, when you think of hackers, what do you think of?
Overseas threat.
What's that?
Overseas threat.
Overseas threat, okay. What else?
Just in general, bad people trying to cause problems.
Bad people trying to cause problems. Okay, that's a good one. That's common. What else?
Stealing identity information.
Stealing identity information. Absolutely. Okay. Anything else? Last call. All right. Well, hackers want some very specific things. They want access and they want money. And a lot of people think that hackers do what they do just to disrupt things and to make things inconvenient and uncomfortable, but usually that's secondary. What they really want is they want access. And the reason why they want access is because they want access to something that will get them money. Amy talked about identity theft. Your identity is worth about $7 on the internet. That's not a lot. You would think, well, why would people waste their time? Well, if you can get 150 or 500 million identities and you can get $7 for each one, that's what we're talking about. These breaches are not small. But when we look at some of the big breaches, you'll find that someone will sell 300 million records for about $2,000 or $5,000 because they want to get the money now. So the idea is, if you're not protected, your information is not going to be released to one group. It's going to be released to multiple threat groups. So let's talk about who hackers are and what do they do. Well, hackers find vulnerabilities, right? That's what they do. But did you ever think that hackers ethically report vulnerabilities? When I asked about hackers, everybody was like, they're bad people, they're foreign threats, they're trying to get my stuff. There's a whole lot of hackers out there that are good hackers, that are looking for these vulnerabilities, and they're ethically reporting them to the people who have these vulnerabilities, whether they're software companies, corporations that have problems in their internal websites, external websites. A lot of companies offer bug bounties. So in other words, Microsoft or LinkedIn or Apple or you name it, Instagram, if you can find a bug and a vulnerability where you can get into their system and you ethically report it, you can make anywhere from $2,000 to $25,000. So there are a lot of hackers that have gone good. and make their money by finding these vulnerabilities and pointing them out to keep us all safe. People are not inherently bad all the time. I would say people have a streak that's inherently bad that can come out, and if it's rewarded, they'll go after it, but not necessarily. And there are a lot of voluntary acts of goodwill. Yes, it's true. There are hackers out there that aren't interested in the bug bounties. And I'll give you an example. I joined a professional organization, and when I went to check on my membership, I logged in and I was in the admin panel of WordPress. I could see all the members. I could see whether they paid for their membership or not, their home address, their email, their phone number. And I immediately contacted the guy who was the administrator, and I said, I don't know if you made a mistake on my identity, but when I logged in, I had admin rights, and you need to look at that, and you need to change your admin password and have everybody else change their password. And the guy got back to me about 3 days later, and he said, yeah, for some reason, after September, anybody who joined the organization got an admin role. It happens. So here's what hackers do. They do a lot of social engineering. And if you're not familiar with social engineering, I'm going to go into it in detail, but they use techniques of pretexting to get information from you and about you and from people who you know, and so on. They pose as someone from IT in your organization, or they pose as someone from your bank or from wherever. They look up stuff on the internet about you, and they look at your LinkedIn profile, and they look at your Facebook page, and they find out as much as they can. They buy and trade databases of identities so that they can use them for whatever purpose they want to do. And then sometimes they sell those databases, but that's not all they do. They also do social engineering. So they go out and do more social engineering. So now they've got these databases and they have identities, and they maybe know based on the emails where people work. And they know that this email, they go and they look on LinkedIn and they go, oh, that guy's a software engineer for E-Trade. So they go and look on LinkedIn at all the employees from E-Trade, and they try and find someone who's responsible for IT. And then they go and find out if that guy's got a vulnerability. Now they're in E-Trade, because that guy runs some kind of a website off of a server in his house that has a vulnerability. And now they're able to go in and get all the information from E-Trade about you and all your financials and all that stuff. Then they try new things, they do more social engineering, and they practice, and they do more social engineering. So a hacker's main job, does anyone guess what it is from this list?
Social engineering.
Social engineering for the win. Yes, correct. So here's what the... Yeah, go ahead.
I have just a quick question. Who's buying these databases?
Anybody that wants to.
Are legit companies buying them, or this is other?
Oh yeah, legit
people?
companies will actually go out and buy them to see what is on, of their information is on there. But literally, I could give you 3 websites right now where you could download, a big zip file. It'd be probably 30 or 40 gigabytes, but once you download it and unzip it, it'd probably have like 400 million records in it. But you'd need a Python script and a SQL database to search it. But literally, there are people every day that are looking at these things. And when we talk about the LinkedIn breach, I'll tell you more about that. But yeah, you can go out and you can buy them and you can look at them. And but there's an easy way to find out if your stuff's been in a breach. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. So did that answer your question though?
It did. Thank you.
All right, and we'll go deeper. So here's what's big right now. The number one threat to you, to your business, to all of us is phishing scams and other social engineering. So a phishing scam is an email typically that you get that tries to convince you that it's legitimate and get you to fall for it and click on a link. We all know about the Nigerian princes who've left us $75 million, and the person who's the exchequer of the Bank of Nigeria only wants, 10% of it. And if we could send them $1,500 so they can get started on the process, they promise they'll only take 10% when they send us the 90% of it. So those are the phishing emails that you see all the time. But there are other more subtle phishing emails that might look like they come from someone in your organization. For instance, if someone got a hold of Mike's email address and was able to send something to someone else in the chamber, and it looks like it came from Mike's email address, and there's a link in it, and you click on it, who knows what could happen? I fell for one just last week, and I'm pretty smart about this stuff. I've been applying for contracts, and I got this email from a company that I recognize that had an RFP out, and they were looking for a response to this RFP. So I clicked on the link, and it took me to a website, and I put in my email and my name, and I clicked on it, and nothing happened. So I was like, oh, wow. So it had, sign in with Outlook, sign in with Google. I was like, I'm not going to do that. So I tried another email address, clicked on it, nothing happened. Then I looked up at the menu of the address bar, and the URL wasn't for the company that I thought it was for. And I was like, oh, I've just been had. And you know what? I just gave them 2 of my email addresses. When nothing happened, that didn't mean nothing happened. On the back end, it sent my email address and my name to their database. And immediately I started getting spam in one of my email addresses. So if I could fall for it, anyone could fall for it. So that's number one. Number 2 is ransomware. Now, ransomware was really big a couple of years ago. And when most people think of ransomware, they think of there's this threat, some malicious code ends up on one of your computers, and it encrypts all the data, locks the computer, and puts up a message that says, hey, you pay us $18,000 or $80,000 or $100,000 in Bitcoin, or you don't get your data back. It's locked forever and encrypted forever. Well, there's 2 ways to beat that scam. Number 1 is to back up your stuff regularly. And a lot of people do, but some people don't. They just like, I don't know how to back things up. The other thing is, with those types of ransomware threats, many of the antivirus providers have a fix for that. So you can go to their website and you can download a program that will unencrypt your stuff. So they've changed ransomware. They said, oh, well, they got us beat. So here's what we're going to do. Here's one you can't beat with software or backups. We've got all your data, and unless you pay us $100,000 in Bitcoin, we're going to make it public. Can't stop that. You can't stop that with a backup. You can't stop that with a software fix. If they make your data public, it's public, and anyone can buy it for whatever, $25 or whatever. And then when it's saturated the market, then it's free. So depending on your size, you may think that that's a big threat or not a big threat. But remember, the hackers only have to win once. As a defender, you have to win every time. So if they win once and you have a customer who has something that they want, let's say you have a customer that's, CEO of a company or a famous celebrity or whatever. They go and they check these things against all the social sites and see whose information that is. And then they use that to kind of go down the rabbit hole and find other targets. The third threat is just malware, malicious code that will just screw up your computer because it's putting something on there that will phone home. And the most popular one of those is what's called a botnet. And a botnet is simply a network of tens of thousands of computers that all have this same malicious code on it. And the hackers just use the computing power. You might not even know that you're part of a botnet. You got some meme in an email from someone, and it was a talking dog or something, or a talking pineapple, and you're like, oh, this is so hilarious, and you forward it to all your friends. Well, stuck in there some malicious code, and it joins you up with the botnet and just starts phoning home and using your computing power. And what that computing power is doing is it's sending out spam emails, or it's sending out phishing emails, or it's going out and scraping the web and finding public internet addresses, all completely unbeknownst to you. So malicious code can sign you up for one of those botnets. Another thing is potentially unwanted applications. So you go and you download some cool thing that someone advertised on Facebook, and it's this cute little program. There used to be one called Comet Cursor that everyone downloaded, and it turned your cursor into a champagne glass or a little bear or whatever. And then when you moved your cursor around, it made little sparklies and stuff. Comet Cursor was full of malware. So it not only did it grab all your contacts and send it off, but it would also tell other malware, hey, this computer loves malware, bring more malware. And then you would get more and more and more. And then there's browser hijack objects. These are the things that hook into your browser. All of a sudden, one day you go and you're looking something up and you're not using Google anymore. You're using Search Viper or Smart Search or Searchamundo or something else. And like, what happened to Google? Well, something took over your browser. And it said, hey, we're going to use this. And then everything that you search for, it's logging all of your searches, all of your clicks. And then, back in the day, it was all about viruses and Trojan horses. Trojan horses are things that you click on that look like they're one thing, but they're really something else. So it could be an image and it looks like it's a funny GIF and you click on it, but actually it installs some code. Or maybe it's some type of a utility. Oh, this program will clean your computer. It'll clean all the malware off of it. That's one of the biggest betraywares that are out there. You go to a website and this pop-up comes up. Oh, your computer's infected. And unless you download this program right here, people are going to get your IP address. And you're like, oh my God, and click on it. And yeah, now you've got some malware that's not cleaning your computer. It's going and telling everybody, hey, sucker right here, everybody, sucker right here. So that's what's going on. I mean, that's every day, all the time. And the more you use your computer for fun, the more you're going to run into these things, because people who use their computer for fun are just susceptible to all this stuff, because anybody can make something look fun. You put kitties on there and yeah, people are going to click on the kitties. That's just the way it is. So these threats are real, and they're not just annoyances. They will go for your data, and they will go for your contacts, and they will interfere with your business. So let's talk about social engineering. Social engineering there's two simple definitions here. Essentially, it's a non-technical way of intruding on your privacy, and it relies heavily on human-to-human interaction. And that often involves tricking other people into breaking their normal security procedures. So like I said, someone who's new at work, they get a call and yeah, this is Kurt from IT, and we are cleaning up our servers, and we're going to need to wipe the email server and bring it back. So I just want to make sure I have your email address right. Okay, well, it's Dave@mycompany.com. Okay, Dave. And your password shows as password 123. Oh no, I don't use password 123. It's stupid zebra 595. Oh, good, that's a pretty secure password. All right. So when we're done, we'll email you back, and you just make sure that your login works. Great, sounds legit, right? You just gave the guy your username and password. So now, if he wants to get at your company data, if he can take over your machine, he might be able to get into other places on the network. It's the same thing with operational controls in a factory. Like most manufacturers feel like, well, my manufacturing software isn't connected to the internet, so it's safe. Wrong. Because if someone can get in from the internet to one of the other computers, does that mean they can't get in on your local network where your manufacturing execution system is? No, it doesn't mean that. Because if those two networks aren't secure, if someone can get in, they can get around. And that's the thing you got to remember is once someone gets in, they can get around. And social engineering is the #1 tool. People just don't guess at emails and passwords without having some information up front.
Can I ask a quick question, David?
Sure.
So would an example of something like this be those silly quizzes and, have you ever kinds of questionnaires that you see a lot on Facebook? Are they actually gathering that information?
Yeah, well, those quizzes on Facebook, they're not only gathering that information, and a lot of times they seem really innocuous, but once they have access to your profile, unfortunately, you share a lot of things on Facebook that open you up to a lot of things, and so do your friends. And so that's what happens. They get access to your profile, all your contact information that's in your profile, right? So anything you listed, whether you're married or not, when your birthday is, where you live, where you've lived before. You ever sign up for something or like for benefits and they say you need to have a secret question? Like, what street did you live on when you were 5 years old? Well, guess what? If that information is somewhere on the internet and a hacker knows that, then they can go to your Blue Cross site. And when it says, hey, what street did you live on when you were 2 years old? Now you know. So open source intelligence is social engineering where people will go out and they'll look on the public internet for anything they can find. That's called OSINT in the business and in the military. HUMINT is human intelligence. So let me ask you something. Amy, before you lived in Poway, where did you live?
Let's see. Before I lived in, well, I lived in San Diego, other parts of the county.
Okay, right. And did you get married here?
I did.
And you have kids, right?
Wait, this is getting posted on YouTube.
Exactly.
Yes, I do.
Exactly. This is what I'm saying. Sharing is not caring. When you share something, it means I don't care who has this information. I don't care where my kids are having soccer practice, what days they practice, what time they get there, what time, oops, I got to leave to go pick up the kids at soccer practice. Here are their names and their ages and pictures of what the numbers are on their uniforms. How much social engineering do I have to do? Not a whole lot. You're giving me everything, everything, and your friends.
Well, and how
You
about the
don't
kids
care.
how about the kids that post pictures and it has their location? You can find the location of where they're posting from.
Exactly. And so the idea is that, now if I just, it used to be in the old days, if someone would want to rob a bank, they'd have to sit outside the bank, for 2 or 3 days to figure out what the routines were. I can get all your routines just by looking. I can find out that you work at such and such a place. Let's say you're a registered nurse. I can create a profile of, someone who lives in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, who's a registered nurse, and I can become your friend and, oh yeah, nursing, blah, blah, blah. And here's where I went to nursing school and now we're friends and you're sharing stuff with me and I can find out anything I want to know about you. People, stop sharing personal information. And people who just, you don't know that want to be your friend, they're not your friend. They're just someone who wants access to you, whether they're a hacker or not. I mean, if you don't know me, don't share everything with me. Qualify me. If someone walked into your business and said, hey, can I come behind the cash register and count how many 1s and 5s you have? What are you, crazy? But this we're doing in our businesses, with our business Facebook, our business Twitter. If we're just throwing up websites and not making sure they're secure, not checking our e-commerce, not checking all the different systems that we use. If we use WordPress, are we keeping our WordPress posts and everything secure? If we're using some kind of e-commerce, is the link between my site and the e-commerce secure? These are things you need to know. And if you don't have an IT person, and trust me, Charlie from the Senior Center, who used to work for, solar turbines, he's not your IT guy. He's just old Charlie from Solar Turbines. You need someone who's qualified to kind of check these things out for you. So now, in the world of cybersecurity, we have cybersecurity analysts. Many of these people come from the old hacker kind of old guard, and maybe they played video games as a kid, or they tried cheat codes, and they tried hacking into their school or something like that. But eventually they decide to do that stuff for good. So there's 2 teams. When a company like JP Morgan Chase spends over $250 million on cybersecurity every year. They spend over 10 million a year on ethical hacking. So they have a red team, which assumes the threat actor role. They look and they find and exploit vulnerabilities. They deploy malicious code. They socially engineer against the blue team. They try to disable networks, shut down systems, and then they design and acquire new tools to make these attacks. And then there's the blue team. They're the white hat, where the red team is kind of like the black hat. The blue team is the white hat. They assume the defensive role. So they're scanning and monitoring their systems for breaches and compromises. They're actively defending against these threats that are coming in. They're social engineering against the red team to maybe find out what tools they have or what, who they're partnering with. And then they rebuild all the servers and the networks and the defenses. Everything else is up to you and me. Everything that's not at that level is on us now. It's not IT's job, it's our job. Just to tell you a little bit about this particular job, if you're looking to make a career change, this is the fastest growing job category in the world. In 2019, there were 131,000 information security analysts. By 2029, that's expected to grow 31%. So they expect to have 40,900 new jobs in the next 10 years. And my bet is that that number is going to go up. If you had a boutique hotel 5 years ago, you didn't need a cloud services manager, but you do now because you're hooked up with hotels.com and orbitz.com and who knows what else, other booking sites, and you have MailChimp for your email marketing, and you have HubSpot for your CRM, and you have whatever, ... You need to connect all the dots and make sure that you're secure from place to place. Business in the cloud is great. One of the main reasons business in the cloud is great is because you don't have to worry about the backup, because they have redundancy and they're constantly backing up all your data. But if you're not 100% on the cloud and a lot of your data lives in-house, if you're not backing that up, and if you're not backing it up to the cloud where there is redundancy, where there are multiple backups made, then that data could completely be shut down. I used to do document management, and I would go to companies and I would go over to the file cabinet and I would open up the 5-foot wide file cabinet, and I would reach in and grab a piece of paper. And I said, what is the true value of this piece of paper if it's lost? Well, it depends on what piece of paper, right? It could shut down the entire business, depending on what piece of paper it is. So a breach is not just a breach, is not just a breach. Someone sends you malware or something, that's one thing. But if they can eventually get to some records, that could be something completely else. And then up here, you'll see there's also a purple team, which is kind of new, where you have people who are kind of working both sides internally. These people are essential. Without these 170, 200,000 people, we would have a lot more terrible breaches than we have already, but it's actually pretty bad. All right, I want to move on and talk about the two types of businesses. There are exactly two types of businesses, and you have to figure out which one yours is. There are those that have been breached, and there are those that don't know they've been breached. Your business has been breached. If you have a website, if you have a membership site, whatever, if you send out emails, if you receive emails, if you're on Facebook, chances are someone's gotten in and they might have just dropped a little piece of software, or you might have inadvertently dropped your own piece of malware by downloading something or clicking on something that's just waiting for the right time. There's a lot of latent programs out there that don't do anything right away. They'll sit there for a while, and then let's say it connects you to a botnet. When they spin up the botnet and say, okay, now go out and do this, all of a sudden your computer starts acting a little weird, or it's a little slow, or you're in PowerPoint or Excel and it starts to freeze a little bit, and you're like, oh, I'll just restart it. And if you don't have antivirus software, if you don't have something that can scan for malware continuously, you might not know that it's malware that's doing it. And it might be, well, I've had the computer. Well, let me tell you something. A computer is not like a Dodge Dart. it doesn't just slow down over time. It doesn't have mechanical parts that get worn out. Okay, computers get slow because there are too many processes happening at the same time. There's too much memory being used, and there's too much processing going on. That means there's more programs running than you actually think. It's not because your computer's old. You can have an old computer that's faster than lightning if it's never connected to the internet. So if you don't know that you've been breached, well, it's time to get busy. So let's take a look at this website called haveibeenpwned.com. So Have I Been Pwned was put up by a guy named Troy Hunt, who I forget who he used to work for. He used to work for some technology company. And let's see if this will open up on my desktop. Can you guys see that website now? Did that pop up? Yeah, okay. So this is Have I Been Pwned. And what happens here, they'll show you all the breaches and kind of what's been included in them. But what you can do is you can put your email or your phone number in here, and I'll just put in one of my old emails for you, and we'll see which breaches I've been in. This email doesn't work, hasn't worked for like 10 years. Pwned, that email was in 18 data breaches. So it's 123RF, Adobe. It's in this big public combo list, which Anita, you were talking about who buys these lists. This is a combo list, which has data from multiple breaches bunched together. So it had 458 million unique email addresses. Sit 0 day, this is 23,000 websites with over 226 million email addresses. So my email address was in those 3 combo lists, was in a Covey list, was in the Discus breach, the Dropbox breach, the Evite breach, the Last.fm breach, the Money Bookers breach, Share This, Trillion, TrueFire, which was a guitar website, Wanelo. All right, so if I've been in 18 breaches, you go to haveibeenpwned.com and you just check some of yours. The other thing that you can do here is you can check passwords. So let me just use an old password here. This password's been seen 6 times before. How about this one? This was a good one because it was more than 8 characters, it had special characters and everything. But the problem is, see, if it's been in a breach, it doesn't matter how good your password is. So, and when these breaches happen, what they do is they will tell you, oh, well, we're going to give you free credit monitoring for a year and blah, blah, blah. So let me go back to, get up from there. All right, so can you see my PowerPoint now? Okay, good. All right, so these are just a few of the companies that have been breached. If you see a company twice, it's because they've been breached at least twice. And finally, Zoom. Yes, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. One of the biggest ones here was the LinkedIn breach of 2013. And with LinkedIn also fell Dropbox and another site called FormSpring. And the way that this happened, let me just show you the size of what those logos on that screen. This is what it looks like in the number of users that have been compromised. So what happened with LinkedIn was there was this hacker, and he was going around, he was LinkedIn, and he was like, oh, these people have a lot of interesting data. And so he started looking around LinkedIn, and then he found someone who worked for LinkedIn. And so then he went and looked at LinkedIn for all the people that are in the LinkedIn, connections. And he found a programmer that worked for LinkedIn. So he went to that programmer's LinkedIn site, and it said, oh yeah, I went to this school and I specialized in Oracle, and this kind of backend, and I do this kind of programming. So now the hacker knows, okay, knows how he works, knows what he's working on, knows what he's working with, knows where he went to school, right? Knows where he works now, works for LinkedIn. So probably LinkedIn has the Oracle backend, right? He's got all this figured out. Now he goes and he looks at, well, where else is this guy on the internet? Well, it turns out he has his own personal website, and it's got his resume and some samples of his work. And so he finds the IP address of that website, and he goes and he kind of sniffs it, and he finds out that it's a residential IP address. In other words, this guy's running the website off of a computer or a server in his house. So then he goes and looks, are there any other websites that are hosted on that same server? And it turns out that a roommate or a friend of his has a website, and he's a gamer, and he just has, bits and, things about games. And so he tries to see if there's a vulnerability on that site. And sure enough, he finds a port that's open. He gets into that computer. Through that, he's able to go in the local network to the other guy's computer, and he finds out that that guy can log into LinkedIn from home on that computer. And with a little work over a period of a couple of months, he's able to get into LinkedIn. And he was able to get 165 million user records from LinkedIn. When this list finally got publicized, and it did, these are the top 6 passwords that people used on LinkedIn. The number 1 password was 123456. Over 700,000 people used 123456. Now, do you think they only used that password on LinkedIn? No, they used it for everything. So if I can find you on LinkedIn, then I can find you on Facebook. And guess what? I'm going to try that password on Facebook, and I'm going to get into Facebook. I'm going to get it wherever I want. Now passwords have to be longer, but we're still not very smart about how we put passwords together. So there's another website that I want you to know about and try, and it's called useapassphrase.com. A passphrase is a collection of 4 random words that you can remember, right? If you can use a password like this, arguably Smasher Anaconda Morale, it would take 22 trillion centuries for a hacker running a brute force attack to break this password. Whereas if you used something like "4 days to crack Tame Impala 2020. 22 trillion centuries or 4 days. So, something like llama, parrot, yes, 23. Even that's 6 years. So that's why you should use a random passphrase, and you can have them generated for you, or you can kind of create your own. And then the other thing is you should use a password manager, because you should have different passwords for everything. And yes, it's impossible to remember different passwords for everything. That's why we have password managers. You remember one password to get into your password manager, and it remembers everything else for you. And it fills in all the forms on all your websites and your apps for you. It couldn't be any easier. Well, what if the password place goes out of business? Fine. Great. Let that happen. If they're so successful, I don't think they're going out of business. With the way hackers are working, these guys aren't going out of business. Likely, Microsoft will buy them. Apple will buy them, Google will buy them, Facebook will buy them. They're not going out of business. Password managers will be around forever, or until we finally get rid of passwords. They need to go away. Most of you are familiar with two-factor authentication. So that's where you have a password, but they send you a one-time password to a device that you have. So it's something you know and something that you have. That's two-factor authentication. So something you know is your password, but something you have is your cell phone or your iPad or a key fob or something like that. And that's the second level that everyone needs. But even two-factor authentication is probably going to go away. There's going to be a better method to come out. So let's talk about this. So in this LinkedIn breach, there were 165 million usernames, emails, passwords, all your work data, probably your resume. So was your stuff in there? You can find out, go to Have I Been Pwned and find out if you're in the LinkedIn breach. If you're still using the same email or password, change it. This is the Holy Trinity of cybersecurity. It's awareness, education, and preparation. And you have to have all three. You're not going to make it without all three. And we're almost at the end here. But the awareness that you need is, yes, you are a target. And no, it's not an IT problem. You have things that hackers want. At the very least, you have computing power, which the hackers can use to send out more malicious code. At best, you have personal data. And they can find out if they can get at your personal data, they can get at other people's. When they can get in, they can get around. That's the thing you got to remember. Education, you got to learn what your vulnerabilities are in your business, and you have to stop sharing and remove personal data from the web. And you need to tell your employees and your colleagues about the reality here. And you have to also evaluate your customers and your vendors. If someone walks into your business and they start asking a lot of questions, it's okay to say, wait, hang on one second, who are you? There's a podcast I love to listen to. It's called Darknet Diaries. And it's a guy named Jack Rhysider who tells stories about hackers and hacking and breaches and people who defend, good hacking, ethical hacking, bad hacking. There's an episode called The Beirut Bank where this guy was sent over to Beirut to do physical penetration testing on a bank. And he was able to get into 3 banks, walk right behind the counter because he had a badge on. And he was like, yeah, I'm with home office and we're going to be refreshing all the computers. And the manager was thrilled. They were all going to get new computers. So yeah, do whatever you need. So he's plugging USBs in, right? They went to the 3rd branch and he got in and he started poking around and they were like, who are you? He's like, oh, I'm the home office. See, here's this letter. They're like, this isn't that bank. He went into the wrong bank. So that's when he got caught. But he still was able to walk back there. So you have to be educated. It's okay for your people to say, excuse me, who are you going to see today? Don't let people just walk. If you have a badge door system, don't let people piggyback and walk in behind you. Let them use their own badge. That's what it's there for. And then preparation. You need to train yourself and your team on how to wash your hands. This is digital hygiene. It's not IT. This is protecting yourself. If you're pining for the old days when we didn't have to lock our doors at night, then you're the perfect candidate to have a weak password and not prepare your business for the realities of hacking. But if you're into washing your hands, use password managers, use passphrases, use 2-factor authentication. Any system that you use, whether it's Office 365 or Facebook or LinkedIn, they all offer 2-factor authentication. Turn it on. Turn it on. Get a VPN for $3 a month. So when you browse the internet, people don't have your actual IP address. Get professional pen testing and an assessment for your business. Pay $1,000 to protect your $1 million business. Have someone who's a professional come in and try and physically get in, try and get in through email, and then figure out how to harden your network. Set up and enforce policies and follow security news. It's worth it just to find out, okay, what's happening this week? What are the big breaches this month, right? So you know what's going on. It's not a surprise to you. The must-haves. This is kind of a repeat, but I'm just going to let them show on the screen here. Make sure you're using all these things. Yes, there is such a thing as cyber insurance, and it's not very expensive. And you can go right to whoever your insurance provider is and talk to them about it. All the major companies offer it, and then there are specialty insurance firms also that offer it. And how much does it cost? What if it costs you $1,000 a year? Is that too much? You probably pay more for your car insurance than that. And there's 2 kinds of cyber insurance. There's first-party insurance, which protects you and your data, And then there's third-party insurance, which protects you from someone else's data getting stolen or compromised. So talk to your insurance agent about cyber insurance. It's worth it because, like I said, it's not a matter of if you get hacked, it's when you get hacked. And do you have a response plan? How are you going to recover? There are also pieces of hardware that you can put between your router and the internet, or between your router and your computer, that act as a second level of protection, kind of an electronic condom, if you will. Policies. You should have a basic security policy, right? It should talk about passwords, about, whether people bring their laptops home or lock them in their desk. An acceptable use policy. What can people do on the internet? What can they do with their computers? What can they do with the company phone? If they bring their own device to work, what's the policy for that? Do they have to have antivirus software on it, right? Do they have to have other protections? Do they have to use two-factor authentication? And what is your incident response plan for your business? You need to draw one up. So there are free templates and sample policies available from NIST, from SANS. NIST is a government organization. SANS is a private organization. Zaguro is a cyber insurance company. In the resources I'm giving you in a couple of minutes, you'll have samples and links to all this stuff. So you don't even have to think about it. I'm giving it to you. So go out and look at these policies and set them up for yourself. All right. I don't know if we have any manufacturers or large industrial operators here, but operations technology is just as vulnerable, if not more vulnerable, than your regular IT stuff. So even though this stuff might not be connected to the internet, that also means it probably doesn't have a firewall. It might not have antivirus software. Maybe it uses a special operating system that doesn't get updated. Does it have USB ports where anyone can just go over and stick a USB stick into it? Again, if you can get in, you can get around. And if these systems aren't protected, then once someone gets in, they might be able to get from an internet connected network to your industrial or mechanical network. And if you want more information on this, Google Stuxnet up at the top of the screen, STUXNET. Google that term and you'll find out about a breach that happened not long ago that affected a water authority, where the hackers went in and used their code to increase a level of sodium chloride into the water system that could have poisoned everybody in town. So here's your next steps. It's 5 minutes to 12. Evaluate. You need a security assessment. Find a way to do it, whether you go and grab the NIST framework off the internet and do it yourself, or you hire a private contractor to come in and assess. Create your security plan. What is your risk tolerance? What are you willing to tolerate and what are you not willing to tolerate? And what can you control and not control, right? Get busy on the Holy Trinity: awareness, education, preparation, NIST, free resources, CISA, government agency, free resources, Cyber Ready Institute, big training curriculum that's 100% free because it's funded by big business. And then ESET, the antivirus company, offers free cybersecurity awareness training for up to 9 employees. If you have between 10 and 250 employees, it starts at about $25 per person and goes down to about 15 per person the more you have. All right, so if you go to twinpeakstraining.com/cyberhelp, you will find this page that you see here with 3 PDF resource guides full of best practices, links, samples, sample security plans, policies, links to training, links to best practices, all that stuff. And then also you can use me as a resource. So there's my name, my phone number, and my email address. You can get in touch with me and I would be happy to help you find something at no charge. This is a free service that I'm offering because we all need to do this. It's the equivalent of washing your hands, folks. And it's too important to think that it's somebody else's problem or that you're not a target. And so with that, I'll stop and I'll take any other questions for the remainder of the program.
Dave, that was awesome. Thank you so much for doing that for us. We really appreciate it. And great and scary at the same time.
Yep. But you don't have to be scared. You can be prepared.
There you go. Nice. I like it.
I agree. I think without putting anybody on the spot right now, I think, at least for speaking for myself, I am definitely guilty of some of the, password infractions in the past, and I've gotten better at it, but I know that in the past I've used numerous accounts with same passwords and stuff like that, and it was just a matter of laziness, and maybe senioritis of forgetting things and stuff, like, who knows? But anyway, I appreciate most importantly, I appreciate the valuable resources that you gave everyone. I think that those, websites that you gave us to go in and look to see whether we've been breached or not, as well as for businesses, the policy recommendations are very critical as well. So I'll look forward to posting this on our website for our membership to view later on. And I also appreciate you coming up and saying, hey, if you need help, because that's the big thing. That's what these webinars are all about, is having a person now that you know or know of to be able to contact and say, can you help me? I think that's very important, because if not, we don't know who to go to, and we may just end up, going to someone that's just going to end up charging us a whole lot more and doing a lot more than we really need. We're looking for a basic model and they're trying to sell us a premier. So I think that's very valuable for us, and we really appreciate that.
Yeah, and this is not my business, so it's there's no sales pitch here whatsoever. I'm a training guy. I do cybersecurity training, but the point of this is just to let people know that there's stuff that you can do, and I can help point you in the right direction. And there's no pitch here whatsoever. I'll point to you to whatever resources I can help you find.
No, we sincerely appreciate that. Any follow-on questions, comments before I call it a wrap?
No, just anybody who's watching that doesn't know Dave, I can vouch for the fact that ever since he's joined the chamber, he's been very giving and just looking to help others with your videos and everything else. So we really appreciate you, Dave, and check him out and take it seriously.
Yes, I love you all.
All right, folks. Okay, that being said, great session. I will get it posted for you, and you guys have a great day.
All right. Thanks for letting me get.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.